Hi folks, Dave Schmidt. It's the afternoon of August 9th as I'm here coming to you today. First of all, I want to say thank you and welcome literally to the thousands of new people that have signed up on my newsletter list in the last 2 and 3 weeks. I've been doing this for about 3 years, and over the last year I had been quietly building a database list for what I call a round 2 of what is called the private exchanges. The people who have been faithful, who have been with me for 2 and 3 years, the thousands of people who have attended my workshops, they know who I am, they know where I've come from, they've listened to me week after week, and we have all developed what we call a beneficial and respectful relationship with each other. They know my background and they know my history. Well, when you add about 4,500 new people over a process of about 2 to 3 weeks, well, there's a whole lot of you that really don't know who I am. And you did sign up on a list. And for some of you, you may have heard about me. Some of it may have been good. Some of it may have been not so good. But what I want to do in this video for all of the new people, and a refresher for those of you who have been listening for a couple of years, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background and a history about myself. It takes a step of faith for you to step out and to trust what's going on in this process. There's some people that have that and they aren't in a position to do that, and there's others that have some issues of concern, and I understand that. But let me take a step back. First of all, if you're new, go to my website, thesedonaconnection.com. You're going to get this newsletter, and go to my website and listen to the archived radio programs from the last 2 weeks and read and watch the videos. From there, you can also go to my YouTube channel, which is just Dave Schmidt, and you can scroll through all of the videos that I've been doing over the last almost 3 years now in this process. For those that are new, here's what I do. I put out a weekly newsletter. I do the newsletter and put it out on Tuesday nights. Sometimes I get delayed and it comes out early Wednesday morning. And the newsletter is a precursor to the radio program that I do on Wednesday nights. Most of my message and content is in video, not in print. So you're always going to want to watch the weekly video. But as I said, that's a precursor to the radio program, and you want to follow up with the radio program. The radio program is live on Blog Talk Radio at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and it goes for 2 hours. I talk about the issues, I talk about the RVGCR, I sometimes have guests that are relevant to what we are doing in this whole process. And I've done this now for about 3 years. We're at the point now where things are really, really close to the funding process. I've been on the phone with folks last night and again even today to find out some of the stuff that is from information from sources that have a very high top level security clearance of stuff that is going on in Washington, D.C. and also in the financial center in Reno where most of this takes place. Now, having said that, let me back up. I'm a former state senator in Washington State. You can see that plaque there on my back wall. I served in the state legislature there for 12 years. And when I did that, like most people, I entered into the process really truly thinking that this was something that I could believe in, this was something that I could trust, that our democracy was something that was serving us well, and I was here to do what I could to help serve and be in the process. I never reached a big leadership position. I wasn't really anybody of a notoriety, even in my home state. I was just an everyday run-of-the-mill legislator that served my 12 years when I was there. But I learned a lot in the process. I learned about how government really works. And I did begin to wake up and to understand that money was what really controlled the system. When I finished my legislative service 10 years ago in the year 2006, I right after that had used some of my contacts and I went into a real estate development project. It was a project that I did with another partner, and in late 2007 I was about 8 months away from making about $700,000 when real estate was absolutely exploding and booming. This project was so solid that we even had the banks that were fighting over who wanted to loan us the money. And then the crash came in 2008. And when the crash came, I crashed. I lost everything. I had to file bankruptcy, and I also lost my home to foreclosure because, see, I had put everything in I had financially into that project because I was trusting what other people were telling me, especially in the banking industry, that this project was absolutely solid. And based upon the previous 4 to 6 years, it was solid. I made my decision. But how many of us really saw the crash coming? Personally, I should have been able to have seen it because, see, not only did I spend time in politics, I also have a background in banking and finance. And along with that, I had been a part-time market trader for almost 20 years now. There was about 8 years of my life that I was addicted to CNBC. I watched it for 6 to 8 hours a day, every day. The TV was always on in the background. And you learn a lot about financial markets when you watch something like that for that long. There's another side of me that also has what is called the spiritual side. I am a seminary graduate. I have a master's degree in biblical studies. I was a minister in a Pentecostal church for almost 6 years. And I have basically made some transition along that line. And a lot of you are aware of that and you know that. But I'm very broad-based in what I come to you at. I don't judge people for where they are. I let people choose to be where they are in their life, in their whole journey of whether it's along the financial line or even along the spiritual issues. But here's what I know. Money always has a spiritual connection to it because, see, money evolves around our view of life and how we view life. So when I come to you, I come from the experience of those three backgrounds. One, as a seminary graduate and a former minister with spiritual implications. Number two, an extensive background in business, understanding markets and banking and finance. And number three, 12 years as an elected official, 20 years around running or being involved in political campaigns. I lived in the North Seattle suburbs for almost 30 years. When I went through my crash, I was just ready for a change. My parents were passed away. My 2 adult children were living out of state or out of country. My one sibling, the brother that I was in contact with, had passed away. So I had absolutely nothing tying me down. So about 4 years ago, I moved here to my home in Sedona, Arizona, and I love it here. This is home for me. I don't have any plans on going anywhere else. It was about, it would be now about 3 years ago that someone had introduced me to the dinar and dong issues. I was fully aware of what was going on in the process, but I never got involved because in the back of my mind, I was always asking the question, who's going to pay for this? One of the things I had learned during my 12 years as an elected official is always follow the money. If you really want to know what somebody wants, if you want to know what's going on, follow the money. So when I followed the money and the currency issue early on, I was saying, this just doesn't make sense. Where's all this money going to come from that all these people think that they're going to get? Because when you buy a dinar at 1/10 of a penny and it's supposedly going to change at about $3.50, well, who's coming up with the 3,500% increase? Somebody has to pay for that. Well, it was about 3 years ago that somebody had explained to me what was called the oil credits contract issues between Iraq and China and the dinar dong holders. And that made sense to me. And you know what? At that time, it was very practical, it was very pragmatic, and people were talking about the exchange rates were low enough that it did make sense because we didn't have what was called this absolute explosion of people buying dinar in the last 3 years that we've had. Up until that time, it was within what I would call a reasonable probability that could happen. So I bought some currencies. And I started helping some friends of mine here in Sedona. I had developed a list of around 35 people that I was kind of helping to coach through this process. And it was in late September 3 years ago that somebody had commented about an article that had been placed on a blog site. And they were talking about this process and the system and how you're going to exchange your currencies and the banks involved and stuff like that. And I came away and I said, that's a piece of crap. Excuse me, but it just was. It was so stupid, and the person who was writing it obviously had no experience in the banking process and procedures of operations within banks about how they would carry this out. So I sat down to write a letter to my 35 friends because they were all kind of up and gaga about it. And I thought, come on, folks, your ignorance is showing, is what I was saying to myself. So I sat down to write a letter, and sometimes, when you do that, you get a little bit inspired. And so what was going to be a simple letter ended up turning into a 10-page expose about how this process worked. And I sent it out to my 35 friends. And lo and behold, I still today don't know who did this. But somebody had it put on one of the Dinar blog sites. And the next thing you know, it turns up on another site. And within the next 10 days, I had received over 1,000 emails commenting on the article that I'd written. I had literally hundreds of people saying it was the most logical thing that they'd had ever read about this whole process. I even had Dinar recaps, the folks there at one time, and say it's been one of the best articles that they had ever seen. And and since they've banned me from the site. But that kind of catapulted me into this whole thing. And I thought, did I really want to do this? What else was I supposed to get into it? Well, after my, my experience and my term that I had in the legislative process, I had also become aware of what really happened in the 2008 financial crash. When everything fell apart for me, I was determined to learn what had happened. So I started doing my research. And that's when I really woke up to the fact that this whole financial system that we have, not only in the United States but around the world, is a contrived, controlled financial system by some very elite people that we call the cabal. I had come to understand that the 2008 crash was a deliberate, what is called pump and dump. You pump up the debt, pump up the debt, pump up the debt with literally millions and millions of people, and then deliberately crash the system. In that process, the big four banks that were too big to fail became even bigger. They eliminated their competition. And that was the real effort behind these cabal people that run these four banks, was to totally eliminate their competition as much as possible, gain total power and control over the global financial system. But in the process, literally millions and millions of people were hurt. I was one of them. A lot of you were involved in that as well. This is the cabal-run system of the financial system in our world that runs and controls the Federal Reserve System. And if we remember, right after that is when the Federal Reserve went into what is called these quantitative easing processes, where they were literally printing up trillions of dollars out of thin air. But that money was never given to us. It was given to the banks to pump up their what is called their fractional reserve systems that they needed so they could continue to stay afloat and the system wouldn't crash. Well, what we know now is it's absolutely clear that we are on the verge of a complete global financial collapse. And the Federal Reserve System can't stay afloat anymore. All of the G7 countries are in debt beyond their ability to recover. And we know something has to happen. Well, in this process, I go back to 3 years ago, when I started challenging a lot of the different blog writers, because I was saying, who's going to come up with the hundreds of billions or hundreds of trillions of dollars to pay for this exchange as you're talking about? At the time that I got involved in it, a lot of people were saying the dinar was going to trade at somewhere between $3 and $3.50. Then the next thing you know, it's going to 5, to 10, to 16, to 18, to 35, and to $38 per dinar is what they were reporting. And people were in amazed, in awe over this, how much money they were going to make. And that's when I began to realize there's some real deliberate disinformation that's going on in this whole system. And I challenged the blog writers. And most of the blog writers and most of the blog sites, they banned me. And I'm going to be very practical because they didn't want to face the truth. They didn't want to face the fact that most of their information was deliberate disinformation to keep you confused, to keep you in a place of what is called the monkey mind. Because these cabal personnel, they're not stupid. They're very powerful, bright, brilliant, controlling people who are addicted to the sense of power and control. And they understand the power of human thought. And they know if they can keep you confused, if they can keep you in a position where you got the monkey mind, the thoughts constantly going on in your mind, is it not, is it this, is it that, and am I going to get this money, am I going to get that much money, what am I going to buy, and am I going to have this new $10 million house, and I'm going to buy this $150,000 car. All these crazy thoughts. They want you in that position. And that's why there's a lot of this stuff that is deliberate disinformation. After about 4 months, well, first of all, I had a background that I was fully aware of the existence of what is called the Dragon family in Asia, and they're headquartered in China. And I was saying that the only place on this planet that had the money to pay for this type of a system was the Dragon family. Because see, these Dragon families had been what is called custodians or keepers of an amount of gold that just is staggering for us to even comprehend. But this gold had been kept private and it became secret, and you would never hear about it in the news media, you would never hear about it in the history books, and you never heard about this Dragon family because it was their job was to keep it secret from us, the public. And it wasn't so much secret from us, the public, as much as it was secret from the control of the cabal. Because if the cabal ever got a hold of the Dragon family's gold, they would be in power and control for another couple hundred years to come, keeping us in slavery. They have used the power of debt to keep the human race in various forms of financial slavery for almost 1,000 years. Most of the debt issue has just been in the last century. But prior to that, it was always if they could control the money, they could control the people. And we know that the human history has been an issue of a few kings, dictators, and monarchs having oppressive power and control over the masses, and that's been the human history for thousands of years. We are approaching now a point in time where these massive controlling cabal, they can't use secrecy anymore. The internet has been the best gift to us to be able to understand and to know the truth of what's really going on in our world. And the cabal has come to the point realizing they can't keep it secret anymore. And there are people are waking up and coming to the point and rallying, and there are a lot of what you call white hat governments that have been so tired of being so oppressed by these cabal controllers for decades upon decades that they're beginning to revolt, in so many words. But it's a peaceful revolt, and they're standing up and taking power and taking control away from the cabal. When I started this process, I have always been committed to telling the truth as I understand it. I'm not here to say that I'm totally right, because I don't have all of the information. I have some very, very good sources who give me information. And part of that has come what I learned in my political process, because you learn the networking, you learn the inside stuff, you learn what really goes on, and you get to develop the networks of who's really in power and who's in control. And I've been able to take advantage of that to develop a network of very, very good informative sources. But what I can say, when I went through my own personal crash, when I lost everything, and I had to start totally from scratch all over again. And then some of you have heard my story that I was even at one point, I was one day away from being homeless. Now, yes, could I have gotten out and gotten a job? Of course I could, but everything was screaming inside of me is just trust this process. And what that process was of what I was going through was a releasing and a letting go of what is called an ego consciousness around money. The need and want of money. And I literally had what I would call was undone or healed a lot of that conscious mindset that the masses of us have about money. We somehow think money is going to make us be more secure. It's going to make us be more important. It's going to make us be more powerful. And if I have more money, I am more important. That is how what society presents to us. And we buy into that. And so we want more for ourselves. And that produces part of what is called the consciousness of greed, the consciousness of power, and the consciousness of corruption. And people at the top have a tendency to fall into that. I had learned how to let that go. So I'm at this point now. You get to believe whatever it is that you want to believe. But I'm not here about taking your money. In fact, I get criticized so much for what I say and what I do, and all you got to do is go to my YouTube channels and watch the people criticize me. I don't take money from anybody. I don't ask for your money. Yes, I have a donation tab on my website, but I put that there for a specific reason. Is because I'm a firm believer that money is an energy process, and it needs to flow. What I do is like, first of all, these newsletters are absolutely free. My radio program is absolutely free. My ability to answer your emails is absolutely free. Now, I have to admit, I've come to a point I just cannot answer everybody's email anymore, because otherwise I would be spending 8 to 10 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week doing nothing but answering emails, and I just cannot do that and serve you. But what I do is, yes, I make revenue off of my workshops, and that's what pays for my bills. That's what pays for my expenses. That's what allows me to pay my rent and make my car payment, just as what we all have. And everybody gets to choose of whether or not they come. Nobody is forced to do that. And also, I make available what is called a scholarship rate for anybody that asks. So I have never, ever turned anybody away unless we're sold out and there's just no room. I do need to make a correction. There was one person I have said no to because of what I call some personal conflicts that I had with that person, and I felt it was best that that person did not show up at that time. But that's it. And I've had thousands of people attend. And I've had hundreds of people email back to me saying it was one of the best experiences they have ever had in attending the workshops. Because what I do there, I put together the full picture of what I've come to understand with all my networks and my contacts, how this financial system in this world works, why we are going through the change that we are going through, and why these funds are going to be released to us. And then how do we, in a responsible manner, handle this massive new wealth that comes into us, into our lives. A lot of people don't have problems when they get new wealth. If you don't think so, it's what's called the lottery complex. There are literally decades of history of people winning the lottery, and well over half of them in 2 to 3 years are right back to where they were when they started. It's a mental process. It's an unconscious psychic process. It creates a huge amount of stress that puts into your life when you come into large masses of wealth that you had never had before. And about half the people don't know how to handle that very well. I believe that's one of the reasons why we've been able to have an extended period of time. Because for those of you that have been involved in this for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, where are you today at being at peace about having all this money in contrast to where you were when you first started? Yeah, I was there. I was reading all the blog sites. I was thinking about what I could get for myself, about having a new car, buying a new home. But what I've come to understand through this process, this whole private exchange currency process is not first and foremost about you and me getting rich. It's first and foremost about us being able to participate in being able to spread the wealth around the world in humanitarian aid projects. Now, I covered that last week in quite extensive detail about why this is happening the way that it is happening. But those of us that do get to participate, we get rewarded very handsomely. Now, when it comes time to start this exchange process, it's going to be a deliberate step-by-step process. And you need to know and understand, I am not the one that gets to set the rules. I am the messenger. I am the one who brings you the opportunity to participate. So the rules, once they are put in place, are pretty much going to be established. You do not have to participate if you don't want to. But what I can tell you, by participating in a private exchange, when a large sum of the money is dedicated to humanitarian aid projects, you are going to get just about the highest rates that are out there. And you are going to have the opportunity to become very self-sufficient yourself. I'm not at liberty to quote rates, but what I can say is this. If you go out and put about a $200 to $300 investment in the Vietnamese dong, you're going to come out with well over 7 figures in your pocket. And about 2 to 3 times that amount, you're going to be able to give away to humanitarian aid causes around the world in your name. And that even includes the opportunity to have for-profit businesses, as long as it is creating jobs, expanding the money, and it is being used for what I would call new paradigm types of businesses. You're not investing in an old business that's basically corporate greed, corruption, polluting the earth, and putting a dominance and keeping people at low wages. No, you're stepping into a new paradigm of job creation that expands the money, expands the people, and sets people free. This process is about changing our world. It's about changing humanity. It's about us being set free from well over 100 years of financial slavery. And that's why this is happening. And the family and the people behind all of this know that. Now, about this dragon family, don't ever think that you are ever going to be able to get in contact with them. That is not going to happen. I don't know why it was me, but yes, they do allow me. And even at that, I'm very limited what I could do. This dragon family is not one cohesive, cohort organization. It is 13 different family lineages that are very dysfunctional and very much in disagreement, and they don't all get along. Some of them are very benevolent, and some of them are flat out cabal financiers and supporters. So don't think when people use the terms dragon family and elders that it's all one and the same. It's not. It's very diverse and it's very different, and there are black hats and there are white hats. But the white hats that are benevolent understand their role and their position to use the gold that they have been keepers of for thousands of years in this time of shift and change. And that's what's coming upon us. So welcome to this process. Now, I need to ask a couple favors of you. Please, please do not email me with your questions about process and procedure. I just do not have the time to answer those emails anymore. I really wish I could. But you can send me an email with questions that I will answer on the radio program as much as possible. Because a lot of your emails are very repetitive. I mean, I can get sometimes 30 and 40 emails in one day that you're all asking the same types of questions. So I'm not going to answer 30 to 4 of them individually. You need to do your homework. If you want to be involved in this process, if you want to become a multimillionaire, if you want to spread millions of dollars around to other people around the world, then you need to do your homework. You need to watch this video, and you need to listen to my radio programs. The radio programs are archived. Now, it's live, as I said, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific time on Wednesday nights. It takes about 3 to 4 hours after the program before it becomes archived. But then you can click on the link on my website, or you can go to the Blog Talk radio program, and then you can actually download the program and save it as an MP3 file and listen to it throughout the week if you want to. So it's for your availability. There are I usually talk for somewhere between a half hour to an hour, and then I go into questions. And the questions that the people bring up answer a lot of your questions. So that's this process. And welcome to this whole process of this currency exchange. My name is the Sedona Connection. I say that because I live here in Sedona, Arizona, and for a lot of people that understand Sedona, this is a very, very unique place. It's a very magical place, and I'm not ashamed to say that, but the people understand that live here, we know that. There's a uniqueness of Sedona, Arizona that is so different than almost any other place in the whole Western Hemisphere. And in this place, it's all about the energy. If you want to know a little more about that, go to my website, click on the About tab, and read through the About tab. This name, the Sedona Connection, was a very inspired, what I felt divinely guided name for me to use. Because there's a connection to what takes place here that spreads all around the world. As I said, it's a very magical connection in a very magical place. And I was shocked when I went to register for the business name, the Sedona Connection, to find out that it was available. And when I saw that, I thought, wow. So I call this business the Sedona Connection because it's a connection about healing. It's a connection about energy. It's a connection about moving into a new promising world. And it's connected to all of that stuff here, and I get to be a part of that connection, bringing that connection to you. So thank you very much for listening to this video. This one is a little longer than normal. It's about a half hour. I normally keep my videos to 5 to 10 minutes, but I want to welcome all of you, the thousands of you that are new to this process of this currency exchange and being able to participate in it. Thank you very much. I love all of you, and see you on the radio program tomorrow night, or have an absolutely wonderful week. Okay, thank you. Okay, bye-bye.